And if you've just tuned in, to let you know you're tuned into Radio Asian Fever on 107.3 FM and around the world on www.radioasianfever.co.uk. So today we've got a discussion topic at the ready, and we're going to be talking to you a little bit about grooming. Grooming के बारे में आपने काफी कुछ सुना होगा, न्यूज़ में आए दिन खबर आती रहती है, और कुछ रोज पहले एक बहुत बड़ा केस न्यूज़ में आया था जो कि रोथरहम में था, और अक्सर इन केसेस में हम सुनते आते हैं कि मुसलमान पाकिस्तानी लड़कों के कुछ करतूत हैं। इस हवाले से अगर आप कुछ कहना चाहते हैं या आप कुछ पूछना चाहते हैं तो हमें जरूर बताइएगा. You can text in on 07503388694. In the meantime, I'd like to invite, let's say, a very big warm welcome and assalamu alaikum to our studio guest, Ansar Ali. How are you doing, Ansar?
Hi, assalamu alaikum to you and to your listeners.
Thank you so much for agreeing to join us today in the studio to talk about the very important issue of grooming. Ansar, you are the founder member of an organisation called TAG. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, well, first of all, I can't take credit for finding the organisation. I was involved with a group of people, and it would miss me to mention the rest of them. We all came together to find this group. Mm-hmm. And we did it because, like most of you listeners out there, we were shocked with the details that came out of the Rochdale case at that time, followed quickly by the Telford case, followed quickly by the Derby case, and then quickly by the Oxford case. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And the thing we were struck by was the level of and the type of suffering that the perpetrators were perpetrating on their victims, which were children. Mm. And that issue always needs to be remembered, that these victims are children.
Mm. What sort of age group are we talking about?
The cases have come to light. In those cases, the children are generally between the ages of 11 and 15. So children as young as 11 being abused and exploited sexually by these men.
So I've got to ask you the obvious question, Ansar, that everyone, certainly the people I think that are tuned in at the moment will be thinking, is this a Pakistani Muslim issue?
No, it's not a Pakistani/Muslim issue. Unfortunately, it's sad to say that child sexual exploitation, child abuse is prevalent in all communities, and it's a huge issue in the country. We know from what's been in the news and the media that child abuse has been an issue for the Catholic Church. We know it's been an issue with a lot of the celebrities that have been in the news recently, whether it's Jimmy Savile or whether it's people, Rolf Harris, of other people of that type. And unfortunately, it's an issue in the cases that have been highlighted in Rochdale and Rotherham and other places, where the perpetrators in those cases are predominantly Muslim/Pakistani men. So to that extent, it's an issue for us as a community, because a significant number of those people are from our community or from a Pakistani ground. So to that extent, it's an issue that's relevant to us and to our community. But it's not an issue that largely, the perpetrators are largely from our community. It's just that in one model of grooming, they're disproportionately represented, and that's the street grooming model, where groups and gangs come together to identify and target young girls and put them through the grooming process so they can be exploited sexually.
Okay, well, I think that's a really, really useful overview of the different types of models that exist, and perhaps that there is one where this particular group is overrepresented, but that doesn't by any means mean that that is the only way the grooming is happening. So I think it's really useful that you've given that sort of context. I think one of the other things that is key to talk about and to mention is that in the grooming cases, the victims, who are the victims? I mean, are they just from one community? Because we get the impression, again, from the media, that it's white girls that are being groomed. Is that true?
Again, that's a myth. A myth is that predominantly or exclusively the perpetrators are from an Asian/Pakistani/Muslim background, and the victims are exclusively white young girls. And we know now from research, and we know from other cases that have come to light, that as far as these guys are concerned, they have no loyalty to any particular community. What they do is they prey on vulnerable girls, and it's irrelevant to them what their racial background is. If they can groom these girls, if they can sexually exploit them, if they can pimp them, make money off them, they will do it. So a lot of these cases have hit the media. They are cases where the perpetrators, as we know, largely Pakistani stroke Asian stroke Muslim men, and the victims are largely young quote-unquote white girls. But there's been other research. Recently, the National Muslim Women's Network has done a piece of research recently, and they came up with a case study of 35 young girls that were from a Pakistani or an Asian background, and they were put through the same process, the same grooming models as come to light with these national high-profile cases.
Right.
And so what that tells us is that both perpetrators and victims come from all racial backgrounds. And in fact, I go a stage further, and that is, it's not just girls that are being targeted. Unfortunately, we're increasingly seeing cases where young boys are being targeted. Again, the same tactics deployed, the same model deployed. The research that's been done in this area by the Children's Commissioner for England, the research they did, they put the figure about 9% of victims were boys. I'm absolutely certain that that's an underrepresentation, but we know that there's no specific gender, there's no specific race. The thing that's common is that these guys will target people that are vulnerable, whether it's young, whether it's children, whether it's young people. They'll be targeted because they're vulnerable. It may be because they're from a fragmented background. It may be because they have been in care. It may be that they've got a mental health issue. For a number of reasons, these young people could be vulnerable, and because they're vulnerable, they're exposed to being exploited by these gangs and these groups.